I thought it was interesting how Naomi wrapped that up. The old guard of your drugs is doing well, but you have some nice new ones in the pipeline, too. How do you see this quarter?
Yes, indeed, it was a very strong quarter, sales up by 7%, and the growth is entirely driven by the new products. Over 90% of this growth is due to new products. Let me just highlight Ocrevus. Ocrevus will now achieve sales of over $2 billion in the first year after launch. This is the most successful launch in the history of Roche. So it's all about the new medicines.
Yes, and as we've talked about, good morning, Severin Schwan, great to speak to you. It's Naira in London. Top-selling medicines facing the competition from biosimilars. So you say it's all about the new medicine, but the stock investors still don't seem convinced. So what can you say to actually convince them at this point?
Well, first of all, what we see is the stock has started to recover, and I believe it's now about delivering quarter by quarter. And as we continue to not only compensate, but actually overcompensate the entry of biosimilars by new medicines, I have no doubt whatsoever the confidence into the stock will come back, and eventually this will be reflected in the share price.
Well, how are you prepared, and I'm sure the new drugs are a part of that strategy, for the biosimilar competition that's coming online? I mean, in the U.S., it's not going to be for Herceptin, as far as I know, until the second half of 2019, but you're already seeing a 10% drop in those drug sales here in Europe.
Yeah, you have two offsetting trends. On the one hand, the impact from the entry of the biosimilars will accelerate over the coming quarters, but at the same time, we have also more impact from the new medicines. And it's not only about Ocrevus. There is a number of new medicines doing extremely well. Look at Perjeta in the area of breast cancer, for example. Already in the first 9 months, over $2 billion of sales, growing at 20%. We have Alecensa, a medicine for a specific form of lung cancer, growing very fastly. And there is a number of new medicines coming through the pipeline. Yes, the impact of the biosimilars will increase over the coming quarters, as biosimilars will also come to the US market. But at the same time, the impact from the new medicines will increase as well. Net, what we expect is that we will grow through this period of entry of biosimilars.
Yeah, Severin, you say it's not only about Ocrevus when it comes to the new drugs. Let me ask you about Hemlibra as well. I know it's early days, but what feedback have you had from patients in terms of Hemlibra?
Excellent feedback. I mean, this is really a breakthrough medicine. It makes life much easier and it's much more convenient from a delivery point of view. Instead of several IV infusions per week, there's only one subcutaneous injection per month. That makes a big difference in patients' lives. And on top of it, we have seen less bleeds for patients with hemophilia A. So now with the broad label, we just got the approval for patients, not only for factor VIII inhibitor patients, but also non-inhibitor patients. I'm very confident about the growth potential of this asset.
Let me, for a moment, Severin, switch from the R&D and product pipeline to the financial side of the business. I'm wondering if the changes in the U.S. or the changes that seem to be planned by the administration affect you at all, from the healthcare system that we got under President Obama that now the Republicans seem to be trying to whittle away at. How are people paying for these drugs in America?
At the end of the day, it is all about the value we provide for patients. I'm convinced, in particular in the United States, if you come with breakthrough medicines like Ocrevus or Hemlibra, which we just discussed, medicines which really make a difference in patients' lives, which prolong patients' lives, which improve the quality of patients' lives, these kind of medicines will be rewarded in the United States in the future as well, I have no doubt. And with the the innovation we deliver as a company, I'm very confident that the US remains an attractive market for us in the future.
On the US, Severin, what do you think of the US policy that would force drug makers to disclose the prices of their products in TV ads?
Personally, I think it is absolutely fine if there is transparency. We already publish our prices anyway, so from my perspective, there is no issue with that. I should also say that we as a company very much focused on specialized treatments, are less on TV than other companies. But personally, I'd have no problem with this.
Let's move down to China, where Herceptin sales are also still growing strong. What is your outlook for the market there? We're starting to see in other industries companies take full ownership of joint ventures in China. How is it for doing business for a drug maker?
For us, China is developing very well, and there are actually two factors. One is that the healthcare system is now shifting from a more basic healthcare delivery to more sophisticated solutions. And what that means is that our more expensive and more sophisticated medicines are getting reimbursed in the public segment. So more recently, some of our important cancer medicines are on the national reimbursement list, and that has really accelerated volume. So this is one effect. We get our medicines into the public segment. The second important effect is that China has really improved its regulatory system. And what that means is that innovative medicines come to the market much earlier. So for example, for Alecensa, a medicine for lung cancer, it was approved only 8 months after we got the approval in Europe. Given historic timelines, this is really a big step forward, and that of course also favors a company like ours which bets on innovation.
Severin, you've said before that trade wars between the US and China don't really pose much of a concern for Roche. Have you changed that view at all? What would it actually take for Roche to be impacted?
No, my view has not changed. And what we see in all of those discussions is that typically when it comes to matters of death or life, when it comes to importing and exporting medicines, and there's really a mutual interest here between the various countries, that typically, for the sake of protecting patients also, that typically does not make it into this kind of trade tension. So I remain confident that we should be less affected than other industries.
I'm just wondering about your stock performance, Severin. You've underperformed the benchmark in Switzerland. It's been a rough 5 years with total return only bringing you back up about 3%. What do investors say to you, and what do you want to do in order to recoup some of their, or to grow some of their investment?
Well, the big question, of course, in the investor community is Roche able to offset the impact of the biosimilars? After all, a big portion of our turnover is exposed to the entry of biosimilars. And you only see over time whether the pipeline progress and importantly the demand for the new product launches will provide enough growth to offset the entry of biosimilars. And I think it's a matter of time. Personally, I'm very confident as I see the strong demand for our recently launched medicines, actually stronger than we even thought internally, certainly stronger than investors still thought the demand would be at the beginning of the year. And I see this continuing. And on top of it, we have a very strong pipeline ramping up. We have today 15 new molecular entities in late-stage development. Yeah. And that, of course, is very important for the mid- and long-term growth prospects.